Part 2. The tin cans were so hot they felt as if they had just been forged. Jack sat on the rock to let the brew cool. Although Praiseworthy's coat and bowler hat had fallen by the wayside, he clung to the black umbrella as a last badge of his calling. A butler! A butler! Mused Pitchpine Billy. He drank his coffee down, steam and all. You any relative to Hemp Butler over at Muletown? So he thinks it's his last name. The name is Praiseworthy, not Butler, sir. The miner crimped an eye. You don't say. Sorry, you don't say. Well, he calls himself Butler, old Hemp does. Never knowed his name was Praiseworthy. But I always figured him for the shifty type. How about 10-spot Butler over at Poker Flat? Here, folks? There seemed no point in trying to make himself clear, and Praiseworthy let it go. Tell me, Mr. Pierce. Just call me Pitchpine Billy. How do we stake a claim? Easy. Find yourself a piece of real estate nobody's working and pound 4 pegs in the corners. Put tin cans on 'em so folks can see. Rags'll do, and you got yourself a legal claim. That's miner's law. As long as you work it at least 1 day a month, it stays yours. He laughed and stroked his beard. Of course, the other 30 days you got to stand around shooting off squatters and claim jumpers. He refilled his tin can. Why, there are places along the river where the claims is only 4 foot square and the boys is digging out a fortune back to back. Jack finally picked up his tin can. The steam alone was like a dragon's breath. Now he was almost sorry Praiseworthy had given him a nod. At the first taste, the coffee bit his tongue. Drink up, Jack. Jamocha Jack, that's what we'll call you. A man ain't really accepted around here until he's won himself a nickname. Best coffee I ever tasted, Jack said hoarsely. Plenty more in the pot. I ground in a few acorns for flavor. Jack winced inwardly. Jamocha Jack, the name pleased him, but he wasn't sure he could win it. The coffee stung and burned and tasted poisonous. He forced down another mouthful. He was afraid the miner would take back the name if he didn't drain the can. He tried another swig, but it wouldn't go down. Praiseworthy, catching Jack's distress out of the corner of his eye, shifted his position. The tip of his umbrella jiggled Jack's elbow, and the tin can jumped. The coffee spilled. It's no account, said Pitchpine Billy. He lifted the pot and refilled Jack's can. We don't stand on table manners out here. Jack gulped and stared at the fresh, steaming black potion of coffee. He had to begin all over again. Praiseworthy gave him a compassionate glance. He considered it his duty to look out for Jack, but now he had only made matters worse. Let me show you how to wash out gold without water, Pitchpine Billy was saying. Take your horn spoon, boy, and scrape me some dirt from the crack in that rock. It's places like that the Spangles like to hide, if there is any. Jack was glad to set the coffee aside to cool. He slipped the horn spoon from his belt and turned eagerly to the crack in the rocks. Just a handful, boy. Jack scraped away, gathering up river sand and bits of dead pine needles. The horn spoon worked fine. It got in the cracks. He filled the miner's outstretched hand and sat on his heels to watch. This is a trick the Sonorians use, said Pitchpine Billy. And here is a picture of him. They come from Sonora, down Mexico way. Water must be scarcer than gold around there. We call this dry washing. So it's the Sonoran Desert. He poured the dirt in a small stream from fist to hand, like sand in an hourglass, while at the same time blowing on it. Sand and pine needles scattered under the force of his breath. He poured again and again, and each time the handful of dirt grew smaller. Grain from grain, gold, it is 8 times heavier than sand. If you blow just right, the spangles fall and the lighter stuff goes flying. Jack bent closer. Finally, Pitchpine Billy had nothing left to blow. He held out the rough palm of his hand and laughed. Boy, you struck it rich already. Look there. Resting in his hand were 2 gleaming pinheads of gold, but to Jack they looked as large as jewels. Put him in your pouch, boy, said Pitchpine Billy. Easy, don't knock over your coffee. "Thank you, sir," Jack smiled, whipping out his brand new buckskin pouch. "But they're yours." The miner grinned. "Anything that small I'll throw back in. You and your pa can squat on my claim." "But Praiseworthy's not. There's more yeller underfoot than I can dig out. I'd be obliged if you'd clear some of it away. You got any idea how to work that tin pan of yours, boy?" "Mr. Quartz Jackson." "You a friend of old Quartz? Why didn't you say so? Stay for dinner here. We'll have sow belly and beans. I won't take no for an answer here. Now let's get our boots wet and I'll learn you how to pan. Bring your coffee." Jack exchanged a glance with Praiseworthy. "Sow belly and beans. We'd be delighted to join you for dinner," Praiseworthy said, since Pitch Pine Billy had left them no choice. They moved to the edge of the stream and Jack took a swallow of coffee. The miner pulled a few weeds and threw them in the pan. Jack got down another mouthful of coffee. "Around running water," explained Pitch Pine Billy. "Gold has a way of getting tangled in the roots of weeds and grass." He dipped water in the pan and washed the roots clean. He added more dirt until the wash basin was better than half full. There he began to pan, using the same circular motion Quartz Jackson had shown them. "You get rid of the rocks and slickens little by little." "Slickens?" said Jack. "Mud with the gold worked out of it. Keep the pan working and dipping and working until the spangles reach bottom. Fish out the rocks. See how I'm letting the slickens spill over the edge of the pan? It takes practice, boy. At first you'll lose more color over the side than you'll save in the bottom, but you'll get the hang of it. Ain't you drinking your coffee, boy? Why, look there. We struck it rich again. Let me have your pouch." Jack took hard swallows of coffee. Then he pulled off his shoes, rolled up his trousers, and tried his hand with the gold pan. The mountain water was icy, but he hardly noticed it at first. He hunted grass and weeds. 5 minutes later, he could no longer feel his feet. "Brr! You're standing in melted snow off the high peaks," Pitch Pine Billy chuckled. "Wash out enough color, and you can buy yourself some boots." Then he turned to Praiseworthy. "You ain't exactly dressed for prospecting yourself. You and your boy will need to be getting a tent and a mountain canary." Here's a picture. A mountain canary, Praiseworthy asked. "Mule or burro? There goes one hee-hawing now. Got a fine singing voice, don't he? What's the umbrella for?" "A matter of habit." "Well, it ain't gonna rain around here for some time, but seeing as how I punctured your gold pan, I don't see any reason why an umbrella won't work just as well. Let me show you." "But..." Pitch Pine Billy lifted it off Praiseworthy's arm and opened the umbrella wide. He stuck it in the ground upside down. "If you don't mind, sir," said Praiseworthy with a flash of impatience, "I happen to treasure that." "Yes, sir," the miner was saying to himself, "it ought to work fine, just fine." Then he began shoveling dirt into the open umbrella. Praiseworthy watched with a kind of quiet horror. He'd carried that black umbrella for years, and now it was being ruined before his eyes. "Oh, thank you, sir." But by then, Pitch Pine Billy had lifted the dirt-filled umbrella into the water and was dunking it. He began to twirl it by the handle. He dunked and twirled and twirled and dunked. "Why, I've panned gold in a pocket handkerchief," the miner said. "The dirt dissolves and washes through and leaves the spangles behind." Jack, meanwhile, was working the slickens out of his pan. He'd step out of the water to warm his feet and take a sip of coffee and then return. He worked 2 pans of dirt without finding a speck of color, but then he didn't have the hang of it. He was losing the gold with the slickens, but he stayed with it and his feet churned blue. Finally, Pitch Pine Billy was no longer plunging the umbrella, but working with a deft, gentle washing movement. He fingered out the rocks, and after another moment returned the umbrella to Praiseworthy. "Best gold pan along the river," he grinned. "I might buy me one of these myself." The mud was gone. In its place along the black fabric of the umbrella lay a bright dusting of gold and spangles. Praiseworthy crimped an eye and smiled at the hospitable miner. "I think I can get the hang of it, sir." He removed his shoes, rolled up his trousers, and set to work. All through the afternoon, Jack could be seen panning and taking a sip of cold coffee, and Praiseworthy cut an elegant figure, plunging a muddy umbrella in the stream. Finally, Jack reached the bottom of the tin can, and that was that. "Yes, sir, first-rate coffee, Pitch Pine Billy," he said. "First rate." "Glad you liked it," answered the miner with a bushy-faced grin. "Jamocha Jack." And that ends chapter 11.